this is just a very short video to go through the homework that I've just marked and given you back, just to make sure that everybody knows exactly where they can improve, because nobody got 100%, so all of you can make some improvements somewhere. So let's start with question number 1, relatively straightforward, kind of 4-mark question followed by the multiple choice. Just asked you to label the diagram. A few people losing marks because you're just not labeling what I asked you to label. So I asked you to label the social cost line, or the marginal social cost line, and also the external cost, which a lot of you just missed out. The external cost then is the vertical distance between the two lines, the private cost curve and the social cost curve. Now, why is that? Okay, I have a mantra in my class. It's not enough to know the answer. You've got to know why it's the right answer as well. Okay, so the reason it's that is because, look, when we're talking about the social costs, we're saying that this is a marginal cost. Like, it costs the firm that amount of money, whatever that figure is there, it costs the firm that amount of money to make the good. Yeah, that's the marginal cost. Okay, that's essentially the supply curve. All right, that's the minimum price that they would be willing and able to sell that particular good at. Okay, but we know that this is a good with negative externalities attached to it. So we also know that when the consumer consumes this good, or when the producer produces this good, there is also a negative effect, a negative spillover on a third party, Joe Public, someone random walking down the street. So that distance there is the additional external cost to that third party. So I don't know, if it cost us £2 to make the product, and then the external cost, so all this negative spillover effect on the third party of that unit, remember it's only that unit, it's not all the units, just that particular unit, is £6, the external cost is £6, then that would take the social cost up to £8. And as a lot of you quite rightly stated in your explanation, the marginal social costs equal the marginal private cost, the cost to the first and second party, plus the external cost, the cost of the third party, equals the marginal social cost. Okay, so that's why it is like it is. The answer then to the multiple choice question, I don't think anybody got wrong. Basically, you just needed to find the area of that particular triangle, which was £40. That triangle there, by the way, is the welfare loss. Okay, so what we're doing here is we're looking, this is the socially optimum level. The reason it's the socially optimum level is because this is where the social costs intersect with the social benefits. This, by the way, is also the social benefits because there's no negative externality. Sorry, there's no positive externality. We weren't told that there was any positive externality. So marginal social benefits are exactly the same. They're just private benefits plus the external benefit. But if the external benefit is 0, like we just said, there is no external benefit, then the social benefits just equal the private benefits. All right, so that line stays the same. So we find the socially optimum level where the social benefits and the social costs intersect. For every unit after the social costs, look, the benefits are lower than the costs. The benefits are lower than the costs. The benefits are lower than the costs. So we're adding up all of those kind of units for which the social costs are bigger than the social benefits, and that gives us that area there, the welfare loss. That's not the external cost area. The external cost is just the straight line distance between the two lines. That's called a welfare loss triangle. Great. The next question, wow, caused a lot of problems. So some of you just need to revise this, okay, because it's not meant to be particularly hard. Okay, I have done a revision video on maximum prices, so if you're still struggling, go and have a look at it. Essentially, the whole purpose of the context was saying, well, look, the price of this particular thing, I can't remember what it was now, some sort of hygiene product in the Middle East, was very, very high. So what they've done is they've ended up putting a maximum price on it. Okay, well, look. Week 1 economics tells you that when you change the price, you move up and down the demand curve. Okay? If we just put a demand curve on this, no supply curve, if we just put a demand curve on this and we said the price has gone up, we would move from point A to point B. We would just move up the demand curve. Prices don't shift the demand curve. The demand curve tells you how much people are willing and able to buy at any given price. So if you change the price, you just change the quantity. All right. So a lot of people shifting the demand curve because of a change in price. It's wrong. The price changes because demand shifts. All right. But if the price shifts, then it must have been due to something else. In this case, some sort of government intervention. So a lot of people manage to get this bit right. The maximum price goes underneath. Of course it goes underneath. The whole point is to bring the price down. It's too high, so the government needs to reduce it. Okay? But then a lot of people started shifting the demand curve inwards and saying, well, the prices, or shifting the demand curve outwards, or I don't know, doing stuff with the demand curve. Leave the demand curve where it is. The demand curve shows you how much people want to buy. People want to buy here, QD. Well, what's the problem? The problem is that suppliers don't want to sell very much at Pmax. Okay? There's not a huge incentive. Economics is always about incentives. What's in it for the producer, the profit maximizing producer? Well, not much. They can't make much profit at Pmax, so therefore they're willing to supply less. And therefore you get a shortage, excess demand. Now that's still only partly what I wanted from the diagram. The question asked you, how does this affect consumer surplus? Okay? A lot of you didn't even use the word consumer surplus in your answer. Okay, if the question asks you about consumer surplus, you've got to talk about consumer surplus. So consumer surplus then, remember, is the difference between what people were willing and able to buy at and what they actually paid. The demand curve shows us what people are willing and able to buy at, and the price shows us what they actually paid. So this triangle is the initial consumer surplus before the maximum price. But what happens after the maximum price? After the maximum price, I'm just looking for a different pen. We're not buying at QD. All right? We're buying at QS. We're only buying at QS because that's how many products are in the market. Because producers don't want to produce any more than QS. Why would they? There's no profit to be made from that. So we go down the demand curve just as we would here. All right, but remember, we've got to stop there because we're not buying any more than QS. So there's this hard kind of line here. We don't go past this line. They do, however, purchase at Pmax. So it's the difference between what they were willing and able to pay for and what they did pay for it, what they paid Pmax. So is this area here. Now, depending on whether the red area is bigger or smaller than the orange area, you get your answer. Okay? It'll vary depending on how far you push the price max down. In my diagram here, it looks like actually consumers are doing pretty well out of this. Okay, but if I'd have had my Pmax slightly higher, then it probably wouldn't have been so obvious. But a lot of people just not doing consumer surplus, and those that did, you forgot that actually consumption can't go past QS. It can't go past QS because producers aren't willing to produce more than QS, okay, because it's not profitable for them to do that. The multiple choice question, again, really quite difficult for some people. I'm just trying to fire it up. Right, I haven't quite got it in front of me. But basically what the question was, I think, was, just give me 2 seconds. I haven't got it in front of me. It'll take me just 2 seconds. Here we go. A government decides to give a subsidy to producers. The price will fall the greatest when the price of elasticity of demand is something or other. Right, we know that that's what a subsidy does. Okay? And what we're trying to ascertain is how big the price level is. And then I give you a series of choices. So, is it when we're perfectly elastic? Doesn't seem to be a huge amount of a price change there. So it's unlikely to be A, okay? Because, yeah, look, the prices pretty much stayed the same. The equilibrium is still there. So maybe if you put A, you forgot that the price elastic was horizontal rather than vertical, okay? And then it basically goes in single, relatively elastic. Well, that's not much of a price change either. Unitary would be kind of at a 45-degree angle here. So that's a bigger price change, but not quite as much as the final one, which is relatively inelastic. Because if I draw a steep demand curve here, look, the price change will be the highest of the options. If I had perfectly inelastic, that would have been the right answer, because you can't get more, you wouldn't get a greater price change, because all of the subsidy would essentially be passed on to the consumer in form of lower prices. But I didn't give you the option. The closest one that we got to that was relatively inelastic. So that's the reason that the answer is D. Okay? Right, moving on then. Into the data, the one about songbirds. Which, by the way, I've got to be honest, it's a tough question. It's a tough data. It's not about necessarily normal stuff that you would have been doing, but there's really no reason why that couldn't come up in an exam. So you've got to just trust your economic tools to get through this. Okay, and some of you did better than others. The diagram. There's not a hard and fast answer to this. I know in the marketing that I'm about to send you, it's got that the demand curve increases to the right, because there's a whole bit about how demand is high for songbird meat in Europe, and a lot of you also talked about the fact that the price elasticity of supply is likely to be very inelastic. So you put those two things together, price inelastic supply and increasing demand. Okay, you definitely get an increase in price. But a lot of you started talking about the fact that there was going to be scarcity of songbird meat. Oh, well, I didn't mind that. Okay, I did that as well. Okay, but there were some crazy stuff, and this is the point at which I think some of you are perhaps panicking, forgetting all the good stuff that you did. People kind of just doing that. I mean, that's never an answer. Okay, that's never an answer. I'm asking you why the price changes. The price changes because supply and demand change. All right, you've never been taught anything like that. If you start doing things with diagrams that you've never been taught in class, I'll be honest, chances are that you've gone wrong somewhere, that you've forgotten something that I'm not going to ask you in an exam to do something you've never done before. So if you start doing this, finish, all right, and start again. This was your just essentially a shift to the right of the demand curve, which I think is probably the right answer, or a shift leftwards of the supply curve, if that's how you interpreted it. And I gave credit for you if you've done that. And then on to the longer mark questions. And if you think about it, this was only a 50-mark paper, but all of the kind of the bulk of the marks come from these final 3 questions. So it's really important to understand where you get these right. And most of you are there now, all right, but some of you still aren't. Okay, there is only one structure to these questions, all right? Point 1, evaluation 1. Point 2, evaluation 2. I'll say it for another year before you sit your exam, okay? It's basically 4 paragraphs. And as we go from 8-mark question to a 15-mark question, those paragraphs just need to get longer, okay? Make sure that these are separated. Make it easy for the examiner, all right? Examiners are going to, I want to kind of read your exam in kind of quick to no time. The more that you can allow them to do that, the more that you can just say, look, here are my points, all in order. All they've got to do is okay, they've got the points, tick them off in the mark scheme, and then flip over to the next question, and you're done. All right? What an examiner really doesn't want to do is get that student who all of their points are jumbled up. They've got no way of working out, it's not obvious where the evaluation stops, where the analysis starts, it's all just jumbled there, and then they've got to do the mental rearrangement in their own minds of how many points actually are there here, once an examiner starts doing that, they're going to dislike you, all right? And you don't want the examiner to dislike you, so make it easy for the examiner, make the examiner like you. And the way you'll do that is just give me 4 paragraphs, all right? Just give me 4 paragraphs. So, the question was, are songbirds, should we consider them to be public goods or not? Which is a tough question. I mean, this is a bird, this is something natural. This kind of goes to the heart of, know what you think of economics as a subject. I mean, should we be commoditizing something like birds? It's a bit weird. But there we go, that was the question. Right. For those of you that did this well, you understood the term public good, you understood that there were two characteristics of public goods, both that they were non-excludable. And let's get that word right, shall we? Okay, it's non-excludable, not non-exclusive, non-excludable. There's no such economic term as non-exclusive, non-excludable, and non-rival. And again, it's important to make sure you understand the difference between the two, because they don't mean the same thing. A lot of you are showing a little bit of kind of uncertainty about which is which. And some of your explanations for non-rival should actually be for that non-excludable. Non-excludable means that once provided, everybody can access a good for free. Okay? Non-rival means that if I'm consuming the good, you can consume the good at the same time. That's two very distinct things. And you can be non-rival, sorry, you can be non-excludable but rival. So for example, what's a really good example of that? Non-excludable but rival. Fish in a sea. All right, we can all go fishing in the sea. All right, that's non-excludable. We don't have to pay to go fishing in the sea. But if I pick up a fish from the sea, that's rival. You can't. All right, so that would be a good example. On the other hand, you can have excludable things that are non-rival. So I have to pay to get on a golf course. But actually, you and I can both share the golf course at the same time. I can be a hole 9, and you can be a hole 1, and we'd never see each other. Okay? So they don't mean the same thing, and they don't have to work together all the time. Songbirds for me then, are they non-excludable? Well, point 1, yes, songbirds are non-excludable. Okay, a lot of you, well, we can all experience the joy of their songs in the park all at the same time, and we don't have to pay to enjoy that. Yeah, that's true. I wasn't really getting a kind of songbird song, if I'm being honest. It was more just kind of, if I want to like shoot or cage a songbird, can I do it? Well, yeah, I can. Okay, I'll just go into the woods now with my gun and I'll go and shoot one. That's non-excludable. On the other hand, here's my evaluation point. The government is at least trying to limit that. Yeah, they're trying to put in licenses. There's an application form that you have to sign in, and maybe even a small fee that you have to pay in order to be able to shoot the songbird. Do you see how this is going? It is non-excludable. It isn't non-excludable. Point 2, it is non-rival. Okay, it is non-rival. Well, it's probably easier to make the other point. It is rival. Once I've consumed a songbird, once I've eaten a songbird, right, you can't consume the same songbird. Okay. On the other hand, maybe they're rival. Okay, there's plenty in the spec that says actually, there's loads of songbirds still there. It's not like they're going to go extinct, really. It depends on the quote that you pick out from the text. What else? Yeah, there's no risk to the population. They reproduce. I mean, okay. What's the answer to this question? I would probably argue that without the licensing, they are non-excludable, but to some extent they are rival. Okay, but I can see how you would make evaluative points on both of these. Okay, the people that did well were people having those discussions. The people who didn't do so well were people who either forgot the structure and maybe gave me 2 points with half an evaluation and just forgot about the second evaluation. People who didn't really know the difference between these two things. And people who just had a very wrong, very incorrect definition of a public good. A public good for them was being provided by the government. Now, we're going to be a bit careful here. I know in newspapers and magazine articles, if you see the term public good, it generally means a good that is provided for by the government. But that's not how we're using it here, all right? In the specification, in your economic spec, all right, so when we use the term public good, we are talking about a potential market failure. We are talking about goods that have the characteristics of being non-excludable and non-rival. So you need to own that and learn this. Fine, point made. Let's go on to the next one, the 12 marker. Right, this is really a tough question, but it's on the specification, all right, and therefore I ought to test it just to make sure that you know about everything on the specification. And really, it wasn't so much a question. It really wasn't so much a question about songbirds in this case. I know that that was the context. But it was really more of a question is like, to what extent should normative statements lead public decision making rather than positive statements? Now, the first thing you want to do with something like that is just make sure that you can show the examiner that you understand the difference between the two. So I would advise in this case giving a definition right at the beginning. Normative statements are subjective opinions, cannot be tested. Positive statements, on the other hand, are statements of fact that can be tested. Doesn't necessarily mean they are true, by the way. It just means they have the ability to be tested. Okay. Now, to what extent should one or the other lead economic decision making? But there's loads in the Marx scheme here. Okay. Probably as an economist, I should be putting towards you that kind of all economic decision making should be based on positive statements, logical conclusions from cost-benefit analysis, things that we can test against the real world, calculations about potential positive externalities of having the songbirds versus the negative externalities of them hitting aeroplanes and destroying crops. But ultimately, governments do make value judgments. Politicians are elected on the basis of normative judgments and arguing what is desirable. A lot of people talked about, a lot of people, actually, on the other hand, people talked about the limited nature of normative statements having no evidence behind them, or perhaps being skewed by incorrect data or a kind of bias of the world. Those are all really good kind of evaluations about normative statements as well. It's very difficult to value the life of a songbird as well. To what extent can we make a positive statement about the life of a songbird? That's quite a deep thought, isn't it? But nevertheless, it had a place here. And I did put in the Marx scheme as a bottom bullet point, and a couple of you did put this out, which is maybe animal rights is actually just beyond the remit of economics as a social science, and maybe we shouldn't really be seeing songbirds anyway as a commodity. And I'm glad a couple of you picked up on this. It's exactly my point. In my world, economics doesn't necessarily, or shouldn't necessarily, always have an answer to every public policy decision-making process either. Have a look at the Marx scheme, have a look at some of the arguments you could have made. I'm sure it's not an exhaustive list, but the people that did well here, what did they do? They did this, they had a neat structure, they gave me some chains of analysis. And by the way, point 1 and point 2 don't need to be in the same direction of the argument. What I mean is, if this is for the argument, all right, remember your evaluation is just meant to be critiquing that argument. It doesn't have to be dead again, it doesn't have to be the polar opposite. So if this one is saying, yes, I'm for the argument, and this is kind of sizing it and saying, yeah, but it's not a very effective argument as well. Point 2 doesn't have to be for the argument as well. Flip it, say this is, well, no, and we should definitely not be using normative statements, we should definitely be using positive statements, could be point 2. So point 1 and point 2 don't have to be in the same direction of travel, right? One can be for the argument, and the other one can be against the argument. Fine. No conclusions necessary. And what people did well again here is they used the context very well. You pulled out loads of quotes and loads of data. Always needed, always needed. Last one then, onto the 15 marker. Government failure. Okay, I think there were one or two people that didn't have a great definition of government failure. Let's be clear, it's a technical definition. All right, government failure occurs when the government is trying to intervene in a market failure, but actually leads to a welfare loss getting worse, yeah, a net loss in welfare, a net welfare loss. All right, it's like they intervened to make things better, but they actually made things worse. Now, in this scenario, there's loads to get stuck into, and actually, I thought this was one of the best answered questions on the entire paper. Actually, so well done. A lot of you seem to have very good understanding of what government failure is and why government failure might turn around. So, for example, a lot of you talked about the illicit bird trade in Europe, and that actually we're putting all these policies into place, but actually all it might do is it might lead to welfare loss in another market, in the kind of songbird, in the illegal trade of songbird market. A lot of you talked about the excessive costs of administration. A lot of you talked about the information gaps that this government policy might be based on. So even though they're saying X number of birds can be Hill that actually where those calculations from, and then a lot of people talking about the lack of effectiveness of the monitoring it. So even if they say 1,000 birds will be killed, what's to stop 2,000 birds being killed, stuff like that. So there's loads and loads of good stuff in there. All right. Again, 15 markers. All right. You only need 2 points and 2 evaluations, but they just need to be big. I realise there's some literature out there, even on the shared drive, that says you need 3 points. Look, the way that examiners in Edexcel are told to mark 15-mark questions is basically you need to hit top band analysis and top band evaluation twice. Now, the reason why people say is give 3 points and give 3 evaluations is basically they're saying if you go for 3 points and you go for 3 evaluations, then chances are 2 of them will be marked at the highest level. My point to you is, look, this is a very, very time-pressured exam, very time-pressured indeed. For a 15-mark question, the best thing you can do is get an answer down there and get onto the essay as quickly as possible. So I'm saying do this for the 15-marker because I'm hoping that your analysis and your evaluation simply for these points will be enough to get you up to the 15 marks anyway. Okay? If you've got the time, go for 3 points and 3 evaluations. But remember, you've got a 25-mark essay to do after this. And actually, the principles with the 25-mark essay are the same. So my advice for the essay is to do 3 points and 3 evaluations and then a conclusion. All right, with the 15-marker, I don't believe anybody's got enough time really to do 3 evaluations and 3 points of analysis. Look, this exam was only 50 marks. I bet there's not one of you that spent less than 50 minutes or less doing it. Okay, I bet you all took more than an hour. Remember, in an exam scenario, okay, you're not going to have the amount of time that you had to do this. So there we go. That's my piece on that. Right. If you still got any questions based on this homework, do let me know. I will try and answer them as soon as possible. I'll see you next week.